Southgate faces burnout fears over his stars ahead of World Cup. The games are coming thick and fast, and, just like club managers up and down the country, Gareth Southgate will be watching the coming months unfold nervously with the health and fitness of his players in mind. With less than a year to go to the World Cup, Southgate is facing burnout and fitness fears over some of his England stars. The Three Lions' last get-together was disrupted by so many dropouts due to knocks, niggles and bouts of illness that England could only name 8 subs, including 2 goalkeepers, against San Marino, rather than the maximum 12. Since then and returning to club duty, Chelsea left-back Ben Chilwell has suffered a serious knee injury which, if surgery is required in the new year, will rule him out for the rest of the season. Arsenal's heavily used Bukayo Saka and Emile Smith-Rowe have also been among the players across the Premier League to succumb to injuries in the last fortnight too, while Leeds' Calvin Phillips has since picked up long-term hamstring problem and Manchester City's Phil Foden was forced off at half-time with another ankle problem against Leipzig on Tuesday. And that is before the season really starts to go into overdrive with the upcoming hectic festive period. Some of England's players are understood to be privately concerned about their workloads with what is to come in 12 months, making their situations ones to watch carefully for their managers. Knowing their bodies, the worry is that, if their game time is not carefully managed, injury is eventually almost inevitable, even if trauma or impact blows like Chilwell's cannot be predicted. The concerns, for those who harbor them, come with good reason. England captain Harry Kane and fellow squad regulars Harry Maguire, Declan Rice, Calvin Phillips, Conor Coady and Saka are among the 5 most used players by their Premier League clubs this season. New boy Emile Smith-Rowe is also in that group and has racked up the most minutes at Arsenal, and Conor Gallagher is in Crystal Palace top 5 too. Borussia Dortmund's Jude Bellingham and West Brom's Sam Johnstone have all played even more club football than their Premier League-based counterparts, while, in England's top flight, only Rice, 1679 minutes, and Kane, 1615, have played more than Tammy Abraham, 1581, has for Roma. Potential hopefuls Ben White, Ezri Konsa, Matt Targett, Mark Gehi, Tyrick Mitchell, Michael Keane, Oliver Skipp, Aaron Cresswell, Jarrod Bowen and Max Kilman also make their club's top 5 most used, along with goalkeepers Jordan Pickford, Aaron Ramsdale and Nick Pope. They have all clocked up at least 1170 minutes for their clubs this season. Of the 27 players in Southgate's plans for the most recent doubleheader against Albania and San Marino, only John Stones, 661, and Marcus Rashford, 565, have yet to break the 1,000 minutes barrier. Among Southgate's options are some players who might be considered old school in their attitudes, ones who hate missing games, will always make themselves available, and even defy injury to play. But just as valid are the concerns of those who are worried about being run into the ground. Some leave no stone unturned to limit the damage caused by the demands of playing for club and country with the way they lead their lives off the pitch. Personal fitness coaches to help with their recovery and chefs to provide ideal nutrition are well used by England's players. One player turned down a lucrative commercial opportunity so he could squeeze in a physio appointment instead in order to maintain his condition following a grueling recent accumulation of minutes. Somehow, a balance needs to be found. Colin Lewin, director physiotherapist at the Lewin Sports Injury Clinic, which he runs alongside cousin Gary Lewin, the ex-Arsenal and England physio, said, "You don't want to take a player to a World Cup who's played 4 times for his club that year. The uneducated people would think, oh, he must be nice and fresh, ready to go, but he won't be as fit as he could be. He won't have his confidence, his form and everything else from playing many games, but not too many." I'm not sure if anyone out there will be able to give you an ideal number of minutes going into a World Cup. The sweet spot is having played enough games to be at a peak level of fitness, confidence and form, but not having played too many that fatigue is playing a part. It is not always the case, but muscular injuries and things like that would indicate a level of overload probably. A player not being at their best physically, or sometimes underperforming on their physical stats or their performance stats, will give you an idea that something isn't quite right. Declan Rice 1679 mins, Harry Kane 1615 mins, Conor Coady 1518 mins, Harry Maguire 1485 mins, Conor Gallagher 1291 mins, Calvin Phillips 1270 mins, James Ward-Prowse 1262 mins, Jordan Pickford 1260 mins, Emile Smith-Rowe 1244 mins, Tyrone Mings 1208 mins, Bukayo Saka 1170 mins. Total minutes played out of players who are in the top 5 for most minutes played for their clubs. It's a difficult balance between overloading a player and underpreparing them. Muscle injuries often happen when a player is underprepared for the match. If they haven't trained in the few weeks leading up to the game, they're underprepared for that game. I can see why some people would think they're fresh, but that can be just as dangerous as overloading them sometimes when it comes to injury occurrence. This season's build-up of minutes comes off the back of a punishing few years for players. That will continue next season, which will start earlier, following a short summer again, to accommodate the Qatar World Cup being squeezed into the middle of the domestic campaign. For them to go straight from Premier League football into a World Cup tournament I don't think is particularly unreasonable, because then they're in the groove, explained the experienced Lewin, who worked at Arsenal for 23 years, the last 10 as head of medical services. What I think players will also say is that the mental break was sometimes just as important in the summer as the physical break. Conversations between all involved will be key to ensuring that, when it comes to the physical element of their well-being, players remain on the right side of the line for club and country. The most important thing is the people skills, said Lewin. You can get as many data points as you'd like, but you learn so much more from chatting to players and managers, having open conversations. A strength and conditioning coach, fitness coach, physio, doctor, manager and player sitting down and discussing the player's availability for an upcoming important game with the data on board as an education tool for everyone I think is the best way of doing it. I'm not saying for 1 second you ignore the data. I'm not saying for 1 second you base your decision on the data. But it's an added piece of education in the background, assuming it's valid and reliable. It's a decision for everyone to make. And these things happen for most games at most clubs. This isn't just a World Cup-based decision. Every week, these chats and communications will be going on. When it comes to real red flags, sometimes you have to stamp your feet a little bit, and I think the vast majority of managers and players would listen then. But if the manager and the player decide it's worth the risk of them playing on the Saturday in that important game, the medical and fitness take a back seat. We're there to inform, not to pick the team.